The day after Thanksgiving, you'll wrestle a total stranger in the aisle of Walmart to save $40 on a TV. On Halloween night, you'll knock on someone's door asking for candy in the dark. On July 4th, you'll pay for a box of fireworks just to watch them light up the sky for 10 seconds and vanish, and you have no idea why any of it started. Every one of these American traditions began as something else: a marketing scheme, a religious ritual, a corporate PR stunt, a superstition nobody questioned long enough to stop. Here's what they really were before we forgot. 1. Thanksgiving. You picture a long wooden table, pilgrims in buckle hats, Native Americans passing over a turkey the size of a toddler. Everyone is smiling. Everyone is at peace. Now picture what actually happens at your house. Uncle Frank passed out sideways in the recliner, 3 plates deep, remote still in his hand, game muted, mouth open. That dinner did happen, sort of, in 1621, but it wasn't a thank you meal, it was a harvest festival, and nobody said grace over a turkey. The first Thanksgiving most people picture wasn't invented by the Pilgrims at all. It was invented over 200 years later by a magazine editor named Sarah Josepha Hale, who spent nearly 2 decades writing letters to 5 different presidents demanding a national holiday. She wanted unity. The country was inches from civil war. In 1863, Abraham Lincoln finally gave in, not because of the Pilgrims, but because he needed Americans to feel like one country again. Thanksgiving didn't become America's holiday because of the Pilgrims. It became America's holiday because Lincoln needed Americans to feel like Americans again. And once the holiday existed, retailers realized a nation sitting around a table feeling sentimental and stuffed was a nation primed to spend money the very next morning. And that next morning has a name. The police gave it first, for reasons that had nothing to do with shopping deals. Number 2, Black Friday. You think stores invented Black Friday, doorbuster deals, camping outside electronics stores, a marketing holiday top to bottom. The name Black Friday wasn't created by stores at all. It was coined by Philadelphia police officers in the 50s and 60s, and it wasn't a compliment. It described the traffic jams, shoplifting, and chaos that flooded the city the day after Thanksgiving, when suburban shoppers and tourists poured in for the Army-Navy football game and holiday shopping at the same time. Police dreaded the shift. They called it Black Friday the way you'd call a hurricane by name, with dread, not celebration. Retailers hated the association and tried for years to rebrand it. They pushed the story that black meant stores finally turning a profit, going from red to black in their ledgers. It sounded better. It also wasn't true. It was cleanup, invented decades after the fact to cover for a name that started as a warning. By the time the rebrand stuck, the holiday had fully flipped from a day police feared to a day retailers built their entire fourth quarter around. Next up is a tradition people think is about celebrating a baby, but for most of history, doing it too early was considered bad luck. Number 3, baby showers. Picture pastel balloons, a diaper cake, and a game where you guess the circumference of a stranger's belly with a piece of string. Baby showers as we know them are barely a century old, and for most of history, people did the opposite of celebrating early. Gift-giving before birth was considered bad luck in many cultures, since infant mortality was brutally high, and celebrating too soon was seen as tempting fate. The modern shower didn't appear until after World War II, when the post-war baby boom met a booming consumer economy, and companies suddenly had a financial interest in convincing new parents they needed dozens of specialized products just to bring a baby home. The baby shower isn't an ancient ritual of welcoming new life. It's a 20th century sales pitch dressed up as etiquette. The next tradition started the same dry, practical way, as a lesson, not a party.
Number 4, proms. A rented tuxedo, a corsage, a hotel ballroom, and a photo you'll cringe at for the next 20 years. Prom didn't start as a teenage rite of passage. It started as a finishing school exercise. In the late 1800s, promenade dances were held at colleges as formal etiquette practice. a controlled environment where young men and women could learn how to walk, dress, and behave in polite society before entering it for real. It had nothing to do with romance. It was closer to a dress rehearsal for adulthood, chaperoned by teachers who treated it like a test. It didn't reach high schools until the early 1900s, and even then it stayed modest, a simple gathering with punch and cookies in a school gymnasium. Prom didn't become the extravagant production it is today until after World War II, when a booming middle class and a new teenage consumer market gave companies a reason to sell corsages, gowns, tuxedo rentals, and professional photography as essential parts of growing up, not optional add-ons. What started as teachers watching students practice table manners turned into families spending hundreds of dollars on a single night. You've made it through 4 traditions, and none of them meant what you thought. Subscribe. The rest don't either. And the outfit you wear right after prom season, the cap and gown, has an even older, stranger backstory involving the church. Number 5. Graduation caps. A flat square board, a tassel, and the ceremonial flip everyone does at the exact same moment. The cap, technically called a mortarboard, didn't originate in America at all, and it wasn't designed for students. It traces back to medieval European universities where academic dress mirrored the robes of the clergy, since universities were originally religious institutions and scholars were often considered a form of clergy themselves. The flat board shape is believed to echo a biretta, a square clerical cap worn by Catholic officials, adapted over centuries into academic fashion. The tassel flipping tradition is much newer and far more American. It became standard practice only in the 20th century as a simple visual cue, tassel on one side before the ceremony, flipped to the other side after, to mark the literal moment a student became a graduate. It's a stage trick, invented so a stadium full of parents could see from a distance the exact second their kid officially finished. The cap didn't start as a symbol of achievement. It started as a piece of clergy uniform centuries before anyone wore it to graduate. This next one is darker than a photo op. It started with people bribing the dead. Number 6. Halloween trick-or-treating. Kids in costumes, pillowcases full of candy, and porch lights on as a signal. We have snacks, come knock and get some. A kid in a bedsheet ghost costume, eye holes cut crooked by his own hand, sprinting between porches so fast the pillowcase bangs against his knees. Somebody's older sibling holding a flashlight under their chin, jumping out from behind a bush. Whether you did this in the 80s or last year, it looked almost exactly the same. Trick-or-treating has roots in a much older, much stranger practice called souling, where poor children and adults in medieval Britain and Ireland went door to door on All Souls' Day, offering prayers for the dead in exchange for small cakes called soul cakes. It wasn't about costumes or candy. It was a transaction between the living and the dead, mediated by pastry. The costumes came from a separate tradition called guising, where people disguised themselves, often as spirits, to blend in with the ghosts believed to walk the earth that night, avoiding being recognized or targeted by them. When Irish and Scottish immigrants brought these customs to America, they merged with local harvest festivals and eventually candy industry marketing in the mid-1900s, which pushed trick-or-treating hard as a safe, sugar-fueled alternative to the pranks and vandalism that had become common on Halloween night. The candy didn't create the tradition. It replaced a bribe to ghosts with a bribe to children and called it fun.
Last one, and it's the only tradition on this list that was planned as a spectacle from day one by the Founding Fathers themselves. Number 7. Fireworks on the 4th of July. Imagine a night sky lit up over a lake, a crowd on blankets, a countdown, and a boom that rattles your chest. Fireworks on Independence Day weren't a later addition. They were part of the plan from the very first celebration. In a 1776 letter, John Adams predicted the day should be marked with what he called illuminations, alongside parades, bells, and bonfires, imagining it celebrated for generations. He wasn't talking about a quiet backyard barbecue. He was picturing spectacle on purpose as a way to make independence feel undeniable and permanent in the public imagination. The tradition also leaned on something older. Fireworks and gunpowder displays had long been used in Europe to mark military victories and royal celebrations, so using them for America's declaration was a direct, deliberate echo of "we did this and we want it seen." By the following year, in 1777, Philadelphia was already lighting up the sky in an organized display 1 year after the country existed. Every 4th of July, Americans light up the sky exactly the way John Adams hoped they would, nearly 250 years ago. Every tradition on this list feels timeless today, but none of them started the way we imagine. Some were born from politics, some from superstition, some from marketing, others from pure necessity. The traditions stayed, the reasons quietly disappeared. And if you think that's bad, wait until you see what else you've been getting wrong. Check out Every Common Misconception Debunked next. It's on screen now.